All right, we're back. We are GAME1014 in the winter 2017 semester at Georgetown College, and we are week 4, part 1 of our broadcast. I just want to make a general comment about the presentations that went on today. I think they were fairly good in terms of what you were asked to do for the most part. In terms of what you had to produce for today, I think most teams were able to deliver, which I think is a positive thing. All right, those are kind of the positives. I think though what I saw is there still needs to be a little bit more, and I'm recording this for this way so you guys can hear this, a little bit more organization in terms of leadership for some teams. What's happened, and this happens in every time, and if I talk about this on the exam, it's all around team forming. And team forming, what ends up happening is teams come together, sometimes 2 teams become 1 team, and then there's a shift of roles. And it happens regularly. I see it all the time with teams. And usually, sometimes a leader is very hard to come by, to a good leader. But there's always one that emerges. It doesn't happen, leadership doesn't happen by accident, actually. It happens because part of it's personality type. Part of it's the person that's going to be the leader. Sometimes we appoint a leader, but they're not very leader-like, and it's not their fault. It's because leaders are made, right? They're not born, okay? And I mean it in that way, and the reason why I'm saying it, people have talent, and they're more predisposed to certain things, but leadership takes time. It takes craft. There's a craft of leadership involved, and that's part of what we're doing here in this course with game production. We talk about producers a lot. The first semester was about producers. We're going to talk about producers again, because you can see how the outcome, if the more organized the team is, the stronger the leadership in the team, the more they're able to deliver, right? And the reason for that is if the leader is confident that they're going to deliver, they deliver. Usually a team will deliver. If the leader is kind of rudderless and they don't know what to do and they make a lot of changes in direction, the team is lost. And there's some really great examples of that. There was a book I actually read quite a while ago, which is very inspirational. It's called Creativity Inc. So if you're looking for someone who is a book to read, and again Amazon has it online as well, this one, it's a really good book. It's also available in audiobook. If you're ever interested in learning about Pixar and Disney and the emerging technology at the time in the 1970s when they first came out with graphics. Remember back in the day, they didn't have any of this stuff. And these guys, Pixar, actually were the innovators. They created a whole graphics engine and a whole computer to do all the stuff that they had to do. It's a very interesting read if you're interested in leadership. Ed Catmull there, Ed, he's the one who talks about his experiences at Pixar and Disney, and first it was actually Lucasfilm. Then it was Pixar. Then finally it was Disney in his travels. And one of the great things about this was his journey and all the stuff he learned about leadership. Now we're talking game production, but film production and game production in a lot of ways nowadays are related, right? And as we move forward in this course, I want you to think about how important it is to have a strong leadership, in the team itself, organization. When you guys get together for your team meetings, and we're going to talk about that as part of our PowerPoint presentation starting next week. What do you do? How do you make it productive? Because a lot of times there's a lot. I kind of talked about this day one. There's a lack of productivity when people get together, because especially if they don't get together that often, because of this whole chiming in thing, right? And it all comes back down to how we used to kind of get together as human beings around a fire. We would kind of chime in and see each other. I see you, James. That kind of thing. And we did it. We would do that a lot. I see you, Corey. And what we would do is we would talk, right, like this, right? And that chit-chat, the chiming in stuff, it takes about 10 minutes of time. Some of the most productive meetings I've ever had, I've had standing up. And the reason for that is because when I stand up with somebody, right, there's no time to chit-chat. There's no time to hit things like your phone. One of the meetings, the kind of the rules we have when I get together with my teams to produce something is no phones. Put your goddamn phone away when you're in a meeting, right? And the reason for that is not because you want to put yourself in a bubble, because there's only so much time we all have. We're all busy people. You have multiple projects going on at the same time, and you all have to be. You're there for a reason. So focus on that thing that you're developing, or kind of trying to, whatever the deliverable is for that week. Any comments? I want to kind of get comments on the floor. You guys saw the first presentations. And I want to kind of get your feel. What did you guys think in terms of how you felt about how the presentations went today?
Good place to start.
Corey says good place to start. I'm just reiterating so we can, so people can hear who weren't here today. Anyone else have any comments? How do you think things went generally? Right? People who are, you guys were watching stuff, right? Would you have done it differently? How do you think I felt about it? How about this? That's the better question. So I'm watching your stuff. I don't know you, right? I'm kind of the new guy, right? I'm watching you guys for the first time. How do you think I felt about your stuff? Right? I'm the audience, if you think about it. Anybody have an idea? You always have to think about, your audience, who you're kind of broadcasting to, right? And a lot of times when we communicate, we send signals that, we want to give, signals that we give by accident, right? We have all these, this body language that goes on. And a lot of times we don't mean to say the things that we say, but we were saying one thing with our body and another thing with what we're saying, right? I can tell when somebody's not happy with what they're doing, all right? It's easy for us to tell. How do you tell? Posture, right? And you're going to see that when you learn more about games, actually, when the posture of your character really matters, right? If the character is tired or if he's hurt, you should see that in his posture. It's almost like you're acting for the character a little bit. And it's the same thing with you guys. You are the characters in your own play, right? So when you come up here and when you present, and some of the feedback that I gave you in terms of tone of voice, your timing and speed and all those kind of things, your materials, that's all part of it. It's all part of your stage. This is your stage when you're up here pitching, right? You're pitching your project, and you're pitching your project to somebody who might want to invest in you. Someone who wants to maybe develop this game, take this minimum viable product you're going to produce and take it further, potentially, right? Or maybe not. Either way, the great thing about this is take what you can from this experience, right? And one of the things I tell people, and it's not always possible, so I'm going to put my hand up and say that, is try and rotate who's up here, right? If it's possible. Give other people a chance, right? If it's okay. If it's completely undoable, like they're not great at explaining or it's not their role or whatever, obviously you're not going to put them up here because if they're not good at that, that's just going to, freak leaders are good. But I'm saying in terms of someone who's able to speak to what they want, they're what kind of discuss the game. If they're not able to do that very well, or if they don't know your product, don't put them up here. But at the same time, don't bring somebody up here who's not going to say anything or do anything like we talked about before. Any questions for me about expectations for the next one? So I'm going to talk about expectations for the next one, right? The next one, I expect there to be an update to your PowerPoint. So you're going to bring your PowerPoint up again. I'm going to put up the requirements probably next week, okay? And what's going to happen is you're going to take your PowerPoint that you had, and obviously the people who didn't have a great product, I want you to make it better. I want you to remove some of those words. I don't want to see walls of text. We don't want to see walls of text in the game, right? If I play Zelda and I see walls of text, it drives me crazy, right? The same thing when we watch a presentation, you're spending hours of your life watching people do presentations. Don't put walls of text. Give them more images, which takes a little bit of work for you guys to do. So that has to be removed as much as possible. I like some of your teams, how they were prepared in terms of speaking. Do less ad lib and plan who's going to say what and how you're going to shift things around. You shouldn't have to tell the person who's pressing the button for your PowerPoint, okay, next. You shouldn't have to tell them that because you should be practiced enough that they know it's time to click next, all right? Because you've done your part. That means you've run through your PowerPoint at least one time before you come up here, right? So those are the kind of things that I kind of want you to be ready for the next time. And of course, your minimum viable product's got to include things like more feedback for the player, some sounds, collisions all have to be working. If you're going to have a scoring system, it has to work, right? I still don't need next week or the next time, it'll be a few weeks from now, I don't require you to have a menu screen. I still don't, right? I just want to focus on that level, all right? If I can have the level going and it's ready to go, the menu screens and the game over screens and all that stuff can happen on the next release, okay? Any questions around that? Okay, without further ado, please bring up your Visual Studio Code if you want to join me. I'm going to be talking about something technical now. I'm also going to be referring to a GitHub repo that I already have up for you guys. So if you go to GitHub, and I have an organization, First Round College, and if you look at the last one, we kind of put up a phaser version of Lesson 3. I just included the phaser library for those people who are interested, but Lesson 3 is the one we're going to kick off today. So we'll move from there into Lesson 4. And again, I have someone asked me to clean up my desktop last week. They gave me some feedback there. Tom, clean up your desktop. So I try to do as much as I can. So I've kind of in this folder here. I'm just going to duplicate this folder. So here's lesson 4. And again, just like I did last time, I need to remove the old Git links. And there is a GitHub link. It's in a .git folder that's hidden. So if I go cd space and drag and drop, and this works exactly the same both in Windows and in Mac, right? And if I do an ls-al, if you're using Linux or Mac, you can see that I have a .git folder. If you're a Windows user, then you go here with your File Explorer or Windows Explorer, and if you see, it has to be unhidden, of course, because normally it's a hidden file or folder. You have to show hidden files and folders and system files and get rid of this .git folder. If you don't, you're gonna continue the commits that you did from your last GitHub repo if you're starting a new repo. For most of you, this won't matter because you're going to continue with your game production of your game, the game you're making. But for me, I need to remove this. And there was a story of someone lately with GitLab. I don't know if you guys have heard this, when they did a rm minus rf star. How's that bad? It removes everything recursively, and you could pretty much destroy everything on your hard drive. So be very careful when you use rm minus rf in a Linux environment. If I do this, right? See what I'm talking about? I really want to do .git. That's what I want to take care of. All right. Now that that's taken care of, I want to initialize my Git repository quickly. So git init. I want to do a git add dot, and then git commit. These are all things we've seen week over week, and then we're just going to say initial commit. So nothing new here. The next thing is we need to set up a new repository for my lesson today, which is going to be, again, GAME1014-W2017, and then it's lesson 4. All right, so it's going to kind of create a new repository here on GitHub. I'm going to grab these last 2 lines because this makes it quicker, and I'm going to kind of copy paste these inside this project window, and it's going to add a remote, which is going to be called master, and or origin, and it's going to send your remote, push your remote to the master branch on GitHub. So now, if you want to follow along, and if you didn't start off with me from last week, please download this repository, GAME1014-W2017 lesson 4, to start with me. Okay, this is the one I'm starting with today. And I'm going to put this, just to make it easier, I'm going to put this link on Slack. Again, I'm using Slack just exactly for this purpose, where we share links. All right, so I'm going to kind of go here, and we're going to say this is the GitHub project for week 4. Okay, so if you want to go there, you can grab that link, and away we go. This includes, if you remember, some simple assets that we're going to use to build out my Hello World project for games, which is kind of this mail pilot project. I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code here, and I'm going to drag and drop. I'm going to drag and drop lesson 4 in there, right? Again, you can choose any editor of your choice. Share will restart. Any editor of your choice. I'm using Visual Studio Code because I've got good code hinting. A review of last week. Remember what we did last week? We set up a core folder. In your core folder, you have your game.ts file, right? And it's referencing an object that we created called plain.ts. And we've broken it out over a couple of, we'll update later. We've broken it out over a couple of folders. One, there's the core folder, and the other one is an objects folder. And this is where I have so far my plain object, right? I also talked about how to set up a Typescript project. What I need to do is set up a task runner, which is what I did. And the task runner last week, which you set up with Control-Shift-B on PCs and Command-Shift-B on a Mac, sets up this little task runner that has this W-W option, which watches if I change anything from a coding perspective and transpiles automatically on save from TypeScript to JavaScript, which makes it 100% compatible with all browsers. I've also chosen in my tsconfig.json file, again, following from last week's lesson, I have my target as ES5, not ES6. So that way it's 100% compatible. Otherwise, ES6 is about 75% compatible now across the world. And if I want to make my game work everywhere, especially on Microsoft Azure, if I'm going to go live with a cloud computing platform, then I want to use something like ES5. So let me show you what we got from last time. First of all, I'm going to press, because I'm back here again, Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B to kick off my transpiler. Once you've kicked it off the first time, now anytime I save, automatically all of my files will be updated. The other thing I like to do is I like to use Light Server or some kind of live server to kind of simulate being live, because a lot of the projects we use nowadays need to be in a live environment. So here's Light Server, and this is including browser sync, so we can see what it looks like when we play our game. All right, so notice that we have to just refresh for a second. I've got my little plane, and it's moving left and right. That's all it does. Also, notice that it's locked, so I can't move my plane up and down. It won't allow me to do that with my mouse. So this is one of the challenges. One of the restrictions that I'm going to give my player is he can't move around the screen. All he can do is, kind of stick in that lower quadrant. And because if I made it that he can move around with the mouse, it would just be too easy. All right, so going back to the code, how I did that was we created a plane class. Here's my plane class that is actually extending the CreateJS bitmap class, right? So it has an ISA relationship, right? For those people who are learning object-oriented programming, I'm using inheritance to inherit all the properties and the methods of the bitmap class that is part of the CreateJS library. That's what I'm doing. I'm also using this asset, which is inside my assets images folder called plane.ping, right? This PNG. And I've also passed in a reference to the stage so that I can update my plane's location on update. And that's what's happening here. So my plane is pretty much intact and working for now. We may have to modify it later on when we do collisions. Now, this is not a fun game right now. I'll have a plane with an empty background. I think one of the things that's going to make it more interesting is for us to have a flowing ocean behind the plane. So I'm going to create a scrolling ocean background for you, right, in this iteration. And what's going to happen is the ocean is going to flow down, and it's going to kind of reset. And a lot of the stuff we do in games is they're tricks. We kind of reuse. We want to try and reuse as many assets as we can when we make games, so we don't load things up every single level. Let me explain. So first of all, I have in my assets folder, for those people who are following along now, you should have your Visual Studio Code launched with this project. I have several assets. One of them is called ocean.gif. It's a really long file, actually, right? And what I want to do with it, just to give you an example, I'm going to bring ocean.gif here go into assets. I want to bring it into an image manipulation program. So let's double click. It's going to bring up Fireworks for me. It might bring up GIMP for you, or Krita, or Photoshop, or whatever you like to use. Even MS Paint, although I hate to use MS Paint, right? So I want you to imagine this. I have a window, all right? So here I'm going to draw a window, right? So here's my window. And I want to draw this window at 640 by 480, because that's really my screen size, my viewport size for now. So here's 640 by 480. And I made it white. And I'm going to basically reduce the opacity so you see what's happening with the window. So my opacity is going to be reduced down to, like, I don't know, 20% for now. So you see that there's a window there. Imagine wherever this window is, right, this rectangle right here, wherever this window is, I want to be able to, and I'm just going to kind of undo those changes for a second. I didn't mean to do that. Wherever this window is, this is what's going to be viewable on the screen. So it's going to start like this. So imagine that the window is going to be here. This is what you see. And as the ocean scrolls, the effect is going to be something like this. So here's my ocean. My ocean is going to go scroll down, and you're going to see different things in the window. And then what's going to happen is when it scrolls down to here, it's going to scroll back up. So that's how the simulation is going to work. It's going to simulate a scrolling background. And it's going to do this forever. So those things, this is how it's going to work. So I'm going to start it in a negative space. Remember that if I have any bitmap, and a bitmap is an image, right? My bitmap's 0, 0 point is the top left corner of it. So this part right here is the 0, 0 point in an X and Y coordinate space of my bitmap. And my screen space, right, my 0, 0 point is down here, right, where my screen is. So therefore, my bitmap has got to be 2 screens for now outside of regular screen space. So it's going to start in a negative value, in the negative Y coordinate, right? Now, if you think about it, if my screen size is 480, right, 480 tall, that means it's going to be negative 960. This is where it's going to start, negative 960, right? Because 480 pixels of it's going to be shown down here. So then what's going to happen is as it's starting to negative 960, it's going to start to fall. Well, it's not really falling. What's happening is it's moving down the screen every frame, right? And I'm going to move it down the screen around 5 pixels per frame. That's going to be my speed until I get to the 0 point. When this the top of my ocean gets to the top of my screen, I'm going to reset it. And that's what's going to happen every single time. Okay, let's program the class. So here's my ocean. I want to create a new object, and this is kind of going to be a review for some people who were here last week. And in order for me to add another class or object to my game, I need to add it somewhere inside my project space. So here I've created a folder called objects, and I'm going to right click and put a new file in place. I'm going to call this file ocean.ts. TS, again, we're using it TypeScript. That's what it means. We cannot attach TypeScript files directly to our index.html because our HTML only understands JavaScript. And we're going to use TypeScript for form and translate it back into JavaScript. Notice now that because I've started my task runner, it automatically converted my TypeScript file, even though it's empty, to an empty JavaScript file. So I'm not going to be working with a JavaScript file. I'm working with a TypeScript file, and it's going to automatically transpile. So the first thing I need to do is put a module in place. I'm going to use the module keyword. You can also use the namespace keyword. And I'm going to use the same module, objects, right? Notice that the folder name is also objects, just so that we can match the namespace. So module objects. My curly brackets denote the scope, right? And inside my module objects, I'm going to export. We're going to use the export keyword to export my class. And my class is going to be called Ocean with a capital O. Right? So again, classes are just blueprints. So we're going to use this Ocean class, right? The Ocean, I can also extend the bitmap, the create.js bitmap. So I'll do that. I'll say extends create.js.bitmap, right? Now, when I do that, I need a constructor, and that constructor is just as initializer. That's what it is, right? That calls the super constructor. So here's a super constructor, and the super constructor is like me using the bitmap itself, right? Where I need, if you notice what I need an image URL, a string or object or something to tell me where I'm going to get my image. I know where my image is. It's inside assets images, and I'm calling it from within the objects class. So I got to go up one step. That's inside my scripts. Up another step to the root of my folder, down into assets, down into images, and then hit my ocean.gif asset. So it's going to be up one, up two, this is from a pathing perspective, over to assets, down into images, and then I'm searching for my ocean.gif. So this defines what my image is, right? This is where my image is, and I'm passing this to the super constructor, which is just like me defining a new bitmap object. That's what's happening here. Okay, cool. So I've got my bitmap. The next thing I need to do is I want to call my start function. So I'm going to kind of call it from within my constructor. I don't have a start function yet, but I will. And I'm going to call this.start, right? Here's this.start. And whenever we call or create methods inside of my class, I need to use either private or public, right? So for now, we're going to make it private. And it's going to be the name of the function, what I'm passing into it, if anything, and what it returns in terms of void. Again, this is all TypeScript, and it's kind of syntactic sugar on top of JavaScript. It doesn't really do anything right now. But basically what it's saying is my start function returns nothing, but it's going to be called as an initializer function from my constructor. Now, inside my start function, what I want to do is the following. I want to set up any kind of initial values for my class, for my Ocean class. What initial values do I have to set up? Nothing. It starts at 0, 0 for now, right? Or should I start the y value at minus 960, right? That's what it should do. So for now, I'm going to say this.y is equal to negative 960 because it's off screen. The top of the Ocean is off screen for now. That's the first thing. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want to call my public update method, right? In my public update method, what it's going to do is it's going to update my the position of my Ocean, so it kind of flows down the screen. Let's do that now. What I'm going to say is every frame, this.x is I'm going to add something to it, right? So I'm going to add a value to it, and I want to make it so that it's a property that I can use, not a hard-coded number. So inside the top of my class here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe some instance variables, or class member variables, if you will, variables. And I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say my change in y, that's what it's going to be called. My change in y is a number, right? I'm going to define it here. And inside my start method, I'm going to describe that the change in y, right, is equal to 5. So this is going to basically say I'm going to move the ocean, right? Or this is the speed of my ocean is really what's happening. Speed of the ocean. Okay. Here I'm going to increase this by dy, right? So every frame I'm going to move the ocean down by dy pixels. All right. It's going to move down the screen, and that's happening every frame. Okay. Are we good so far? Again, I'm setting up a class, and all it's going to do is set up this stuff. Now, here's the problem. I come down, but then I need to reset. And if I was to play the game right now, I need to, first of all, do a couple more things. What are the three things that you need to do to add some kind of class to your project? There's 3 things you need to do. I've already done one of them. Anyone remember? Probably not. First thing is you need to define your class. This is what I've done. Number 1. 2, you need to link your new JavaScript file to your index.html, because your index.html is your manifest, right? So I'm going to go back to my index.html, and notice that I have my objects plane. I'm going to add my objects ocean. So I'm going to copy this and put it in, right? So script objects ocean, and it's going to be JS, not TS. Next, now that I've got my ocean in place, I want to, in my game.ts, I want to refer to it. But we're going to have a lot of these happening, right? If I had my ocean, my clouds, my islands, and I can add other objects, I'm going to have a pile of declarations if I set it up this way at the top of my game.ts file, and that's no good. So what I'm going to do as something different today is in my core folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this thing reference_reference.ts. And inside my reference file, I'm going to put in all my references. I'm going to take this reference, and I'm going to put it inside my reference file. There's a reason for this, just for clarity, right? I'm also going to put in my new ocean, right? So I'm going to put my ocean object. Right? So now I have 2 references. And inside my game.ts, I'm going to reference the reference file. So I'm going to go up to my reference file. Okay, so it's going to be /, and then it's going to be reference.ts. If you click on it, it'll actually add everything on there for you. Right? So my reference file is going to add all my references that I need. And from now on, all I need to do is add in the new object in my reference file so that it knows how to find the type definition library that I'm creating. Okay, good. So I've got my reference. Now it's not in my game. If you notice in my game script right here, I only have a plane object. This is what I've done here. I've added a plane, right? So this is my plane object. Add plane to stage, right? Well, I want to add my ocean. Now, question, should I add my ocean after the plane or before my plane? What should I do? Why should I add it before the plane?
So the plane's closer to the screen than the ocean.
From a layering perspective, right? In Create.js, the way it works is this. Whatever objects you add are added in layer order, unless otherwise specified, unless you actually layer them wherever you want, right? So I can, if I do a add child, it adds it to that part of the display list. Think about the display list as a big array of objects, right? So the way I've done it right now, if I add the plane first and the ocean after, the ocean's going to appear layered on top of the plane. You'll never see the plane, right? So I need to add my ocean before. This is where I got to put it right here. We also have to define an object or a variable for my ocean, and I'm going to do that here. I'm going to say let ocean be of type objects.ocean. There's my ocean. And now I'm going to define my ocean. So I'm going to say ocean is equal to a new objects. Look how it comes up with good type hinting, .ocean. And I'm going to pass inside nothing because my ocean doesn't need anything. right? I don't need to patch my stage because I'm not pulling anything from my stage into the ocean itself. We'll talk about that. The reason why I have to do with my plane is because my plane uses the X and Y coordinates of my mouse, which it gets from the stage object. Okay, I don't have to do that for my ocean. Next, I'm going to stage.update, move this around, stage.update, or add child, sorry, ocean, right? And I need to move all this definition before my planes. I'm going to cut this out here and put it up here, which where it belongs. So here it's going to be add ocean to the stage. Okay. Now, right now, the way we have it, and that's why I brought it in here, it's not complete, obviously. It's going to fall and it's going to stop working, right? Let's take a look and see what we got when we do this. I'm going to save, right? And when I do that, if we did things correctly, and if I added my ocean properly to the stage, right, it should add. But the problem is it's going to add my ocean off screen. And what I want to do here is in my update function, right, I don't just want to update the plane. I want to update the ocean, right? So I'm going to do that before the plane. I'm going to say ocean.update with a capital U. Oops. Save. Every frame now, if I did everything correctly, and it looks like I didn't, right, it should give me an ocean, right? So how come it's not giving me the ocean? There's a reason, right? Let's take a look at the code and see what's happening. So here's my inspector. And notice that in my console, I have an issue. It says, failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 404, where I'm looking for assets, images, ocean.get. I spelled it wrong, and that's why it's not coming up, right? It looked like GIF when I typed get instead. Let me fix that very quickly. So I'm going to go in my ocean. And in my ocean, I say get, I meant GIF, right? And now when I save, right, we should have an ocean, but oh man, what's happening? It's going in the wrong place. I went on the Y, right? But something's happening. What did I do? How come it worked like that? How come it moved this way? Is that what I wanted? Well, no, I didn't, right? And if you notice what I'm doing here, I'm saying this dot X is equal to plus equal to dy. That's not what I want. I want this dot Y, right? Simple mistake, fixed. And now I have a flowing ocean. But there's a problem. It's going to run out, right? And I want the ocean to be recycled, like I talked about, right? So how do we recycle the ocean? Well, I need to put some kind of boundary check. So when the top of my ocean, when the Y of my ocean hits the 0 point, I want it to reset back to minus 960. That's what I want to do. That's all the boundary check I need, right? So I could type it in here inside my update. But what I want to do, notice I've already set up the Y as minus 960 here, right? So better that we're going to call this only once. And I'm going to create another private function that I'm going to call check bounds. And by the way, we're going to start calling private functions or methods with an underscore. So check bounds. Returns void. And all this does is it checks to see where the Y position is. So if Y, this dot Y, right, is what? Is greater than or equal to 0, right? Then I want it to reset. Then I want to say this dot Y, right? And this dot Y is equal to negative 960. Okay, that's my reset. Now this is nice. And that means I can call check bounds here. But that doesn't make any sense, right? In fact, what I really want to do is have another function, because I'm going to build on this for later projects, right? I want to have another private function called reset, right? Which returns void. And I'm breaking this up for you guys so you can see it, where reset means this dot Y is equal to minus 960. That's better. So I can say something like this. If this dot Y is greater than or equal to 0, then this dot underscore reset. And it flows better because now when you read it, it's more human readable. It's not going to add anything. Here in my start, I'm going to say this dot reset. So I can reuse that again. And here in my update, right, in my update, I want to check bounds. You can write this in many ways. And there's a reason why I've got a method to my madness here, so bear with me. because I'm going to write another class that's going to be very similar to this, and I'm going to use reset and check bounds in a different way. Okay? Make sense? So now what I want it to do is every time it gets to 0, it's going to reset, and it's going to keep doing that forever, right? So that way it's going to seem like an endless scrolling ocean. Let's take a look. And here it is. So again, going back to what I was doing, I'm doing this. I'm taking my ocean bitmap, right? I'm taking my ocean bitmap, here it is, and the top of my ocean, when the top of my ocean gets to 0 to here, right where my screen is, it's going to reset back up to here. And it's going to keep doing that smoothly enough so you can barely notice. Now, in order for you to do this, you have to have a couple things. One, your bitmap has to be a seamless tile, all right? Once you have a seam that's visible on your bitmap, it's going to look like it's jumping. And actually, my bitmap is not exactly perfect. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you look at my bitmap, watch for the change. Oh, there it is. Now it's subtle enough. Oh, there it is. So you can't really tell. But it is there. And the thing is, it happens that if you're careful and you watch it, it's apparent, right? Where it becomes really apparent is where you have some really drastic change, like an actual cut on your bitmap. So please try and find, if you're going to do a scrolling background, try and find a bitmap that's properly tiled. It's a tile. So it kind of, there is no transition from one side to the other. It's almost like one side and the other side are the same, right? Which is very hard to find. So I got my little plane. It's going over an endless ocean, but there's no challenge. I want to add in my goal. My goal is to kind of fly over, right, my island. And this is why it's called Mail Pilot. When I fly over the island, I want to deliver mail to the island. And every time I deliver mail, I get points, right? So how do I do that? I need to add another class, right? So I've added my ocean class, and I got my plane, and now I want my island class. Let's do that. By the way, stop me if you have any questions. So I've got this class that I created. By the way, what does it look like on the JavaScript side? It looks like this, right? This is pure JavaScript, and again, it's very compatible. It uses an IFI, right? So that's an immediately invoked function expression, which is a anonymous self-executing function. That's what it's doing. It's a closure, right? And it's passing in the objects module, and it's returning the ocean back to the calling object. Now, because I'm calling the ocean from my game, right, that ocean object is available to be modified in my game, okay? And any public functions, for example, we made that the update public was visible, but the private functions like check bounds and all the other stuff that I made are invisible. An example of this would be if I go ocean dot, you can see all the visible objects that are related to the ocean, because the ocean now is not just a regular object, it's a game object, right? So I got regex and reg-y, my scale, my rotation, all those kind of things I can do with my ocean, just like I did with my hello world the first day we did this. But notice that the only thing that's available to me, hold on a sec, the only thing that's available to me when I go down here is for my own custom functions that I've written is update, right? Which is the capital U. Everything else that I've created is private. Yes?
Those functions are from the bitmap class, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's inherited because the ocean itself is a bitmap, right? It has an is-a relationship. Okay, let's make our island, right? So now I'm going to go back into objects. You know what? My island is going to flow down too, right? It's going to fall down just the same speed as my ocean. The only difference with my island is I want it to have a random X component, right? So it's going to appear randomly from one side of the screen to the other. I'm only going to have one island. When it gets to the bottom of the screen, it's going to reset, right? So I'm going to reuse that asset over and over again, right? So it's almost identical to the ocean, which gives you hints about what I can do. If it's like the ocean, it's almost like I can inherit all the stuff that I have in the ocean into my island, right? We're not going to do that yet because that means that I'll do multiple inheritance. The ocean will be the superclass for my island subclass, but I don't need to do that right here. That doesn't make any sense either from a nomenclature perspective. What you want to do is create a super game object that has the capability of flowing down or doing something else. For now, though, let's just make my own. I'm going to duplicate what I have in my ocean class inside my island class. So I'm going to kind of make a new file, make an island, with my island.ts. And I want to copy in there. I want to do the module. That's the only thing I want to do different. Module is going to be objects. So same module name. And inside there, I'm going to export the island, capital I, right? Which is a class. and I'm going to, which extends the create.js bitmap again. Notice the pattern. Right, here's my create.js bitmap, right? That's going to be, there's the inheritance that I talked about. Now in here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to grab the ocean stuff. Here's my ocean. And from inside here, I'm going to grab all this for now and copy paste. Right? So I'm going to do this for a second, just to show you what I'm talking about. So copy, go back to my island, right? And paste. It's almost the same. I've got a dy, a change in y, right? I don't have a change in x because I don't need that, right? And it's not going to be the ocean bitmap I need. I need the island.ping, right? That's where I'm getting from that. So that's my island. It's not going to start at -960. No, no, no. I want my island to start off the screen, right? By the height, the whole height of the island is going to be off the screen. If I need to know the height of the island to be off screen, that means I need to know the height of the island, right? Which means I want a height property, right? That's going to be local that I want to keep track of, and a width property. So I want to understand height and width, right? Now, do I have a height and width? If I go this dot height, not really, right? So I need to define that. And how do I do that? I'm going to do that in my start method. So in my start method, I'm going to define the height and width of my island. And I want to say something the following. I'm going to say, first of all, we have to define the business variable. So I'm going to say height, which is a number, and width, which is also a number. Question for you. If I don't put an access modifier in front of my variable names, what are they, private or public? Or does it matter? They're public. When it comes to JavaScript, it's public, right? So I want to make them private because I don't want anyone to access them for now, right? So private, we'll make like this, right? For later on, we may change these, but for now they're private. And I may have to rename the styles, but for now, if they're private, I've got this width and height, and I want to initialize them inside my start method, right? So I'm going to say something like this: this dot height is equal to this dot check bounds, right? Not check bounds. Sorry. This dot, and I want to do a boundary check, right? Get bounds, that's what I meant. Built-in function, get bounds dot height. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the height of the object, and this dot width is equal to this dot get bounds, right? Dot width. So I know the width and height of my object now, right? Now that I know the width and height of my object, and I don't need to, but I'm getting both. Later on, you're going to see why. What I want to do is I want to reset my object, the height of my object. So I'm going to say this dot height. So that's my reset value. Whatever the height of my object is going to be off screen, starting off, every time I reset, okay? That's the one change I want to make. The other thing is this. I don't want to reset. I want to check bounds, but not for the top of my screen, but rather for the bottom of my screen. So when it's greater than or equal to the bottom of my screen plus my height, then I want to reset. Yes?
You're spawning many items at the same time. Wouldn't make sense.
Later. You're way ahead of me, right? Yes, I'm going to do that with my clouds. My clouds are my enemies. I'm going to spawn many of them. I'm going to put them inside an array at the beginning and later on an object pooling class. Remember, we have to walk before for some people, they don't even know what I'm doing here, right? So I want to kind of go through this. All right, so let's go through this again. So what I want to do is I want to change my check bounds method so that if this dot y is greater than or equal to the bottom of my screen, and for now I'm just going to hard code it, so 480, right, plus this dot height, right? So the height of my my island. So if it's greater than that, if it's off screen, basically is what I'm asking for, right? If that's the case, then I'm going to reset back to off screen again. That's what's going to happen, right? So that's my island. And the next thing I need to do is, right now, it starts off in the exact same space on the top left corner of my screen. And I want to be able to generate a random location for the island every reset. That means that my x coordinate, I need to set up. I got to say is equal to what? Math.random, right? Multiplied by the width of my screen, which is 480 pixels, right? That's 0 to 480. However, whatever that is, right? That's the first part I need, right? So math.random. So from 0 to 480, but that's not really right because that means my plane or my island can start off screen, right? That's wrong because if it starts at 480, it's going to start off screen. And the other thing is the way I'm drawing my island, I'm drawing it from the top left corner, and I want to draw it from the middle of my island to have more control, right? Which means that I need to set my registration values to the middle of my island. Now, because I have my height and width, I can do that. I can say this.regx is equal to my width. So this.width times 0.5. So half the width is where I'm starting my registration value. And my reg y, so the focal point, the middle point of my object, right, times 0.5. So that's where my island is going to start. And then now that we know that, what I want to do is I want to move it in by half the width. And I want to start from half the width, right? So it's not going to be from 480. I want to start it from a minimum of half the width. So that means I'm going to add, if this is true, so instead of this dot height to do this, over here when I reset, I want to say it's going to start this, right? Minus times, I want to start minus half the width, right? So this dot width, right, times 0.5. So if I do that, I need to set some braces here, right? I want to take this, the half the width, and reduce the 480 by that. Because I don't want to go full 480. If I go full 480, that means it's going to go out, or 640, sorry, not 480. I don't want to go off the screen. I want to kind of come back, right? I want to come back. And I want to add, and again, should I do half the width or all the width? You got to figure out what this is, because I'm going to add half the width on the other side because I want it to be on the screen when I start. And I want it to come this way, which means it's the whole width that I'm subtracting, not half the width. So the whole width, but I'm going to add the width back in. I'm going to add half the width back, right? So I'm going to say math.random plus this.width times 0.5. I'm adding it. So I'm generating the number between 0 and 640 minus half the width, right? Or minus the width plus half the width on. Okay, you're going to see what that looks like. And that's going to happen every time we reset. Now, if this equation is wrong, we can go back and figure it out. Let's take a look. Now, I've done one part. Part one, I've added my island object inside of a file. Part two, what's part two? I can't use this yet, right? How do I use this object? It's not part of my project yet. How do I do it? You guys aren't watching. I need to add this into my index.html. If I don't refer to it, it doesn't exist from the game. That's the next thing. So I got to go to my index.html. And notice I added my plane and ocean, and now I'm going to add my island, my script. It's got to be added into my manifest. That's part two. Part three, I need to change my reference. My reference path shows island and ocean and plane, but I need to add also in island. Right? Now that I've got all the reference paths, I need to use it in my game, which means I need a variable for it for now, where I'm going to call let island is objects.island. There's my island. And now I'm going to add it in. Now, where does it belong? From an order perspective, the ocean's in the bottom, then the island, then the plane. The plane's going to fly over the island, not go underneath the island, right? So that's where it's got to go. So I'm going to take the ocean object and copy it. It's going to go here. And I'm going to change, instead of objects ocean, it's going to be objects island. Oh. And I'm going to add the island to the game, and this has got to be island. When I save, we should have not an error. We should have something else, an island, right? That's flowing down all the time. Where is my island, and how come it's not working? What? Let's check it out and see what's happening on my inspector. Inspector's going to tell me it all. Game started. Doesn't tell me a damn thing. How come? What did I do wrong? Did I do anything wrong? That's right. The island's off screen right now, right? So inside my update, my function, my ocean, I'm just going to update them in the same order. So island.update. With capital U. Now when I save it, transpile, and I should have my island. Notice that my island is moving at the same rate as my screen, as my ocean, and this makes sense because you don't want the island flowing faster than your ocean. That means your island's like an object, a vehicle, or something. Let's check and see how the plane looks. It looks like it's flying over the island, which is good. And notice that my island always starts on screen. So far, mission accomplished, right? Questions around this build so far, right? I've got two things. I've got my ocean. I've added my ocean and my island in this build, and I'm going to upload this to GitHub. So now, theoretically, I should have had two commits. One when I added my ocean, and one when I added my island. Every time you add a feature, there should be another commit up on GitHub. I didn't do that from a time perspective because I'm demonstrating, but it should be that way. So how do I do this? Again, I can use my integrated Git. And notice there's 16 files that I added in or modified. Why? Because inside here, I added my reference, which is 3 files. My game, I updated, which is 3 files. My island, which I actually added, which is 3 files. And so is my ocean. Every time I add something, I'm adding 3 files. I'm adding the TS, the JS, and a map file. The map file gives me code hinting on my browser when I look at that console window. All right? So I need to add all this in. I'm going to go to the changes area. I'm going to click the plus, which means everything is going to be staged to the staging area. Then I'm going to say the commit message, which is added ocean and island objects, which is what I did. I'm going to click the check mark, go to the ellipses, and push. And now you guys should have my code on GitHub. That's all the time I have for today, and I could do more, right? The next stage would be to add a cloud, right? My cloud will be the next one. But my cloud is going to be something special. And again, I'm going to show you my cloud before I end for the day. If I look at my assets, right, here's my assets. And if I go to images, here's my cloud. What do you see as a problem with my cloud? It's a little different than my island and my ocean. Island is pretty compact. In fact, if anything, my island is squarish. My cloud is not, which is going to cause me potential problems when I do collisions, right? Because now I might have a non-visual collision if I try and intersect somehow, right? But I'll have some kind of collision happening on the code side, potentially, right? So that might be one problem. The other problem is it's really big. So when I kind of leave the screen, I want to make sure it's fully off the screen. Second thing is, I may not care if the island starts off screen or not. I don't have to, because sometimes, I'm talking my cloud. If my cloud starts off screen, I don't want it just to go down, because going down is really boring. I want it to kind of have a little bit of drift. I want it to kind of drift to one side or to the other, because it'll make it more challenging for my player, right? So I'm going to take my island class, and I'm going to modify it heavily, because it almost has the same things I need for my cloud, right? Because it has a random value, but it's going to have 2 random values. The speed at which it falls. I'm going to have fast clouds and slow clouds. And where it starts, and how it moves to the right and to the left is going to be all random. Yes?
So are you adding this one cloud at a time, or
I'm going to add multiple clouds. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to first create an array. It's not going to be an object pool, just an array of clouds. And I'm going to add all the clouds in at one time. But I'm going to use a for loop to add them all onto the stage all at once. And then every update, I'm going to update the for loop. I'm going to do an iterator in the update where I'm going to check to see all the clouds, where they are, every single cloud, one by one. So they keep moving around the screen, all independently. They're going to be independent objects.
You just reset the clouds.
And I'm going to keep resetting the clouds. And the reason why I'm resetting is I don't have to do any kind of loads. I'm not loading new objects from my file system. I'm only resetting all the objects over and over again, which makes my performance more consistent. Even if it drags the performance down a little bit, it's equally bad all the time. It doesn't go up and down, which I talked about last time. Questions around what I did today. I know that it's another level, but if you watch these videos in succession, you'll see how I'm building my game out. By the end of this semester, I'll have a full-fledged game with firing, multiple levels, a menu screen, sounds, collisions, maybe some procedural generated stuff. We'll see how it goes. The more time I spend on this, the more I'll be able to build. Yes?
I'm going to do this next class or after the
I have to think, next class and the next class after this, I got to take a pause on this stuff. And that's why I'm going to have to do a kind of a refresh after we get back, because I need to talk about some of the book stuff. So next class, I have to guarantee it's going to be a production class. We're going to talk about game production, some theory around that. and I don't have a lot of time. I only have an hour for you, and then I got to give you some time to work on your stuff, right? So that's what's going to happen next class. Okay, guys, thank you so much. For those people who are going to stick around, please stick around. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Thank you.